Hey everyone, Luke here, hope you're doing well. And today I'm going to go a little bit off topic maybe, but I thought it's an interesting concept. I'm going to talk about probably just three. I'm going to talk about three kind of projects that are going to move planet Earth to the next stage, I believe. Okay, so I say this first stage projects. And what I mean by first stage is that, I don't know if you guys ever have heard of Michio Kaku. He's like a theoretical physicist who talks a lot about quantum theory and stuff. He talks about how there's stages of civilizations, right? So, and you measure the stage of the civilization by how much energy they can produce, basically. Okay, so there's all the way from 1 to 3. Okay, we're right now at like 0.8 or 9 or something. So stage 1, according to this method of calculation, would be we can produce as much energy as solar energy hits the surface of the planet of Earth. Okay, so if we're able to produce enough energy from like fusion and solar panels or whatever, if we're able to harness the amount of energy of, the same amount as solar energy hits the surface of the Earth. Okay, doesn't mean we're absorbing all the solar energy, right? Obviously we can't do that, but I'm saying produce that amount, the equivalent. Right, so if we had fusion reactors, for example, which produced the amount of energy, the same amount as, the energy equivalent of sunlight hitting the Earth, that'd be stage 1. Okay, stage 2 is like a multiple of that, and stage 3 is an even higher multiple. Okay, but anyways, so there's some very important projects that are going to help us move to this next stage. Even though a lot of people are all doom and gloom, the Earth is dying or whatever. I don't really think that. I think the planet Earth is moving forward regardless of what these people think, okay? And you'll find that these naysayers are often reflecting themselves, right? They will say the planet Earth is dying, or, there's all sorts of things with disease and stuff. Oftentimes it's a reflection of themselves, right? Because they feel dead inside and they're diseased, okay? Think about that. All right, so number 1, nutritional bouncing, okay? Now this is the work that I am part of, which is pretty exciting, right? Now the reason why this is an important thing is that the whole food supply is very depleted at this time on planet Earth. The bodies are quite sick, and this is a real fine-tuned science in order to bring better health to the bodies, okay? So this is going to allow human beings to produce much healthier children, okay? This is going to allow people to develop themselves, okay? This is really development science. So I could just say development. I would say that's another word for it. You could just say, you could say development science. You know what I mean? Okay. Because that's all nutritional bouncing really is a development science, okay? It may seem strange, that we're just replacing minerals, improving the diet, getting rid of infections in the body, but this actually causes spiritual development. And nutritional bouncing will be found to be a scientific, mathematical, precise way to cause spiritual development in human beings, where their brains work better, their immune systems work better, they're able to make better decisions, and they're able to produce love better. Okay, this will have a healing effect on planet Earth. It's already starting. Okay, especially as certain people advance themselves, to higher levels, and they share their love with planet Earth. People like Larry, okay, who runs the website drlwilson.com. He's really the guy that pioneered a lot of this, okay, along with Dr. Eck in the beginning. But he fine-tuned a lot of it, okay? So nutritional bouncing, okay, it's going to help heal all the bodies and teach planet Earth about development science, which is, partially like a Tibetan science, right? And it has been taught in places on planet Earth, but what the internet is allowing, and this YouTube channel and this whole community is allowing us to do is to share development science with the whole planet. Okay, never before were you able to develop this way at your own home, at your own pace. You know what I mean? It's pretty sacred information that we should cherish this information that we now have thanks to the internet. Okay, so nutritional bouncing is one. This is kind of an interesting one that I actually think will help a ton, is Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Maybe I shouldn't say Bitcoin. Maybe I should say blockchain. Let's just say blockchain technology. All right, blockchain technology. That's not how you spell technology. Technology. Okay, blockchain technology. So, Bitcoin, things like Ethereum. I don't know if you guys have heard of Ethereum. So, Ethereum is a similar technology to Bitcoin. But what this is going to allow, it's going to transform a lot of things, I believe, and it already is. As you may not, or you may be aware of, all the governments on planet Earth at this time are extremely in debt. Okay, there's runaway corruption with things like stock market manipulation. There's hidden inflation through the central banks that rob poor people of their wealth. You know, inflation is a terrible hidden tax on the poor that no one talks about. Everyone talks about all these things for the effect the poor. None of them talk about inflation, partially because they don't understand it and how it really affects poor people, but also because it's part of the manipulation that goes on planet Earth. But hidden inflation is terrible. It robs people of their wealth by making your dollars worth less, and so your savings is worth less. Blockchain technology is going to solve this. Now, I don't know if it's going to be the underlying asset of actual Bitcoin. For example, the actual Bitcoin token. There could be an argument made that will help things as well, and I think it will. But even just using this technology to decentralize the financial infrastructure. So using things like Bitcoin, and like I said, Ethereum. I think Ethereum, there's a good chance, will be an even bigger part of this movement than Bitcoin. So you can use the Ethereum network, for example, to send tokens that represent gold, okay? And it can be fully audited. You can see it on the blockchain. It's peer-to-peer. It's decentralized. You don't have to trust a central authority like Janet Yellen, who is an old crazy woman that has no idea about anything, that controls our money supply. You know, this technology allows us, the people, to take the power back, and it can't be censored, it can't be stopped, because it's decentralized, okay? And these are going to allow us to do escrows between each other without a third party. They're going to allow us, like I said, to send assets on the blockchain. You can send each other gold. You can do property contracts, so you could actually send title to property on the blockchain. It'll be stored on the blockchain so people can see who owns title to property. Not just property, but any personal property, right? So that doesn't just include actual real estate. That includes any sort of personal property. You could put your medical files on it. It'll change medical files. It's going to change so much about, and it's going to really liberate people. And also, what these technologies are really going to help is the underserved. Most people on planet Earth don't have a bank account, right? We in the Western world here in America, you know, we're spoiled because we have bank accounts and things like that. Most people don't have that. People in Africa don't have bank accounts. And we're also spoiled by having the US dollar, okay? Most in places like Venezuela and Zimbabwe, they have runaway inflation and they don't have anywhere to put their money or even have a solid currency to use, you know? And so Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to take off. Things like this are going to take off in undeveloped countries. You know, the reason for this is because those countries are developing internet and solar power very quickly. So in places in Africa, they're just basically skipping the whole grid and they're just going straight to wireless, you know, technologies for their cell phone, wireless transmissions, and solar energy, right? All you need is a smartphone with a Bitcoin wallet and you become your own bank. Bitcoin with a wallet on your smartphone allows you to be your own Swiss bank, okay? So this is, for billions of people, they'll be able to be their own Swiss bank all of a sudden, and they'll be able to exchange an asset that's not inflated, it's deflationary in nature, and it's peer-to-peer. This, along with sending assets, doing smart contracts on platforms like Ethereum, like I said, where you can send title to property and things like this is a game changer, okay? So don't underestimate this. Another one I would say would be partially, you know, this is kind of a broader thing, but like unified field theory. Okay. We'll just say unified field theory. Now this kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of like free energy devices and things like that. You know, unified field theory will probably allow us to also, you know, maybe develop fusion power. You know, we'll probably need fusion power to develop completely to the first stage. At least that's what like Michio Kaku talks about. Really interesting is work by like Nassim Haramein. Okay, I'm not a physicist, obviously, but I do read about these things that they interest me, just like Bitcoin, obviously, and things like that. You know, I like science type stuff. But Nassim Haramein, I think, is really fascinating in that, there's a lot of things with our current mathematics and physics that we kind of take for granted and don't really make sense if you actually think about it. For example, in classical physics right now, there's 4 forces, right? There's the strong force, the weak force, there's electromagnetism, and there's gravity, okay? But what they don't tell you is for the strong force and the weak force, we don't actually know what caused those. All we know is that there's a force that we can see, right, and we can measure it, but we don't know what causes it, so we give it a name, like the strong force, right? But even though we don't actually really know what causes gravity either, right? We call it a graviton, but we don't know the particle that, gives rise to the field of gravity. But what the work of Nassim Haramein is so interesting is that he talks about how there's actually no such thing as the strong force and the weak force. It's just that they have the nucleus of the proton in an atom wrong, and that the strong force, which is basically, the strong force is just what keeps the nucleus of an atom together, right? So once protons and neutrons get with a certain distance, okay, the strong force takes over and they stick together, and that forms the nucleus, right? So the strong force, we don't know what causes it, we just give it a name, the strong force, but what he talks about is that it's actually gravity, and it's just, there's only really 2 forces, gravity and electromagnetism, and those are the opposite and equal forces in the universe, right, that play out. And then the strong force and weak force are just manifestations of that if you understand that the nucleus of the atom and the proton is actually wrong, and that he shows the calculations and things like that. Nassim Haramein also talks about things like sacred geometry, which there's a lot of truth to. There's really interesting, Fibonacci sequences and geometry that plays in our whole universe. Most of the physicists think he's a quack though, but a lot of scientists thought Tesla was a quack, right? And this will kind of play into kind of Tesla's theories too, and hopefully it will eventually lead either to fusion, right, or free energy devices like Tesla had invented, right? Okay, and I don't even know if I mentioned what unified field theory actually is. Unified field theory is just basically it's the coming together of all the branches of science, right? So right now there's quantum physics and there's like standard physics, right? So we understand gravity on a macro scale between planets and Newtonian physics and theory of relativity and things like that, and then we understand quantum mechanics, right? Which is, or at least to an extent, we have equations and stuff for it. What happens on basically the atomic level, right? But there's no way for us to really reconcile the two, right? Because it doesn't make sense in our current model how these things can be happening at the quantum level but not at the macro level. For example, like if you once you measure the spin of an electron, or you can only measure one aspect of an electron, for example, and then you don't actually know where the electron is, right? So electrons actually only exist in a cloud of probability, technically, in quantum theory, right? And then once you observe the electron, the field collapses and it becomes one of those probabilities. And so electrons don't actually exist in a certain place all the time. It's very, very abstract. But the electron exists in a cloud of probability, right? And then once you observe it, the field collapses, the field of probability collapses, and then it becomes one of those points, And then if you observe it over enough times, that's how you know the probability of where it was. Does that make sense? Maybe I didn't explain that the best, but you see what I'm saying is that, and that doesn't really make sense in the macro level, right? Because if I look at this board, right, and then I look away, I know that the board's still there. If I look back, the board is still going to be there. But that's not true with electrons or very small particles. The particle with an electron, if it's in a field of probability, I look at it, it's in one place, I look away, we don't know that it's there actually. We only know that there's a probability that it's there, okay? But there's also a chance it might be somewhere else. And then we look at it again, and it becomes one of those 2 points. So it's kind of very abstract. But anyways, there's just hard, physics right now can't, reconcile those 2 branches, the macro and the microscopic, the atomic level. And so unified field theory, preferably as an equation, that will reconcile these two things, and all of a sudden gravity and relativity and quantum mechanics all kind of get reconciled into one equation or one kind of thought. Preferably it's one equation. If you talk to physicists like Michio Kaku, they will actually say unified field theory should be preferably one equation like this long, and all of a sudden, like E equals mc squared, something like that, right? That all of a sudden branches everything together in unified field theory. Okay. Things like the ether theory, I think, will also start to, that we live in an ether, will be part of unified field theory. That explains a lot. It explains gravity and a lot of things. Is along with Nassim Haramehn's work is that ether, that we're actually, that there's no empty space. Okay. I don't want to talk too long about this stuff. I could talk a lot, keep going on about the ether and, physics theories and stuff like that. But anyways, these, first stage projects, okay, nutritional bouncing, development science, teaching human beings how to heal themselves and develop their brains and their bodies at a deeper level, which will lead to more love and wisdom and healthier bodies, healthier children on planet Earth. The eradication of a lot of diseases we think are permanent, like diabetes and autism, all this stuff. Nutritional bouncing will serve as a platform to move planet Earth, okay? Blockchain technology, Bitcoin, Ethereum, similar technologies would allow a financial revolution upon planet Earth. They will allow financial freedom for so many people and allow decentralization of financial assets and the internet in general. Okay, unified field theory, and this is also like energy devices. Okay, energy devices and things like that. Because there will come a point, we're getting to that point where energy will become very cheap. And everything on planet Earth takes energy to make, right? This is true of the universe, right? So this camera, it took energy to make it, right? Or anything, this board, it took energy to make. And as energy continues to drop, the cost of energy, the cost of solar energy, and we discover more, we discover free energy devices and fusion and things like that, the price of things will dramatically drop. And this will, again, provide a boon for society as people have more time for leisure and things like that, because it won't be as hard to work and survive because things will be so cheap. We might even end up with like a universal basic income or something like that, where people actually don't really even have to work to survive, because energy is so cheap, along with robotics and stuff like that. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope I didn't drag on about physics too long. And thank you for nerding out with me, my fellow nerds out there. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and I'll talk to you guys later.